Hey everybody, welcome to, I think I'm gonna call this my Cosmere weekend. So I've been super hyped for the release of Lost Metal, the fourth book in the Wax and Wayne series, which is coming out November 15th, which is this upcoming Tuesday. I'm so stoked, and in order to kind of celebrate and get myself in the mood, well, first of all, I decided to reread all of Wax and Wayne, because of course. But I also wanted to do some Cosmere videos. So this one in particular is going to be focused on Wax and Wayne specifically, but I might mix it up, explore some other facets and areas of the Cosmere. But let's dive right into it. I'm super excited, done a bunch of research, some Cosmere scholarship, and I've got a theory. Okay, but first, if you haven't read Wax and Wayne or Mistborn Era 1, heavy spoilers for both. I'm going to be getting real deep into those, so if you haven't read any of these wonderful books right here, now is your chance to leave before they get spoiled, because we're going deep. Okay, let's get into it. So my question that I'm trying to answer is, who is Trell? You see his name come up a lot in Wax and Wayne. His name even appeared in the first era of Mistborn, but Sanderson has been very tight-lipped about who Trell is, and so I wanted to kind of poke the bear, if I may, and dig into who this mysterious shard or shard-empowered entity might be. And I'm going to take 3 scenes from the Wax and Wayne series, one from each book, to kind of break down what I think we can expect in Lost Metal. But before we get into any of the deep theory stuff, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we know so far. So throughout the story, Wax, Wayne, and their companions are fighting the Set, this mysterious organization. But beyond that, there's this looming, shadowy figure of Trell. Trell is somebody that makes even Harmony nervous, is enough to draw him away, keep him from even interacting with his Khandra, and has had his fingers in every single conflict that Wax and Wayne have faced. He has been confirmed to either be a Shard of Adonalsium or empowered by one, and has precedent of being some sort of deific figure. Incredibly powerful, incredibly dangerous, and seems to be bent on destruction and control as any proper villain should be. But this is what they're up against, this is what we know. Now let's dig into theory. And the first one is going to be Miles' 100 Lives execution in Alloy of Law. And so in this execution, Miles has already been confirmed to be a worshiper of Trell and has hinted at things, and he's also a gold compounder, which is going to be important later. But during his execution, while the executioners are firing, he says these words, and these words are important. He reads, "One day, the men of gold and red, bearers of the final metal, will come to you, and you will be ruled by them." And, well, first of all, like, what a way to go out. Like, but second, this quote seems to be pointing specifically to the Southern Scadrians, which we see in the third book, in Bands of Mourning. The men of gold and red, a lot of the Southern Scadrians wear masks, and some of these are gold and red in coloring, and they also have access to et metal, or harmonium, as some have theorized it to be. I believe it's been confirmed that harmonium and et metal are the same, but I didn't look into that. It's an oversight of mine. But this is pointing to, already there's kind of a connection between Trell and the Southern Scadrians, which I find interesting for reasons that you'll see later. But what I think is significant about this is, since Miles was a gold compounder, he was very invested. And people who are very invested remain in the cognitive realm, in the spiritual realm, and like have that contact when they die. for much longer. They have kind of more weight, I guess, and it's harder to get them to transition into the beyond. And I think what might have been happening here, Miles might have been touching fortune, which we've seen happen a couple other times in the Cosmere, and it's essentially seeing possible futures. And I think that he might have been doing this for two reasons. One, he is a gold misting, an augur, which means his allomantic power is already connected with fortune because he's seeing in a different path that things could have taken. So he already has that kind of inclination in him. And also being a compounder, he's incredibly invested, and that just leans itself more heavily toward him touching the spiritual realm, which I think that might have weight, and therefore I think because he was so connected to Trell, there might be some correlation here. So I don't know if I clarified this properly, but I think that the reason this is significant is that Harmony has not had an explicit influence on the Southern Scadrians. His Elendel has been his domain and the people that he's shepherded over, and he knows about the Scadrians. He's mentioned them, but it hasn't ever been shown that he had a direct influence on them, but someone else did. And the fact that Miles, a worshipper of Trell, is saying that the men of Golden Red will rule you suggests that somebody else has been influencing them and has been intervening in that sort of realm. And so that's why I think that prediction, that future sight, if you will, was significant to this. But moving on, another facet of who Trell might be, and kind of, I'm assuming part of the plot of the Lost Metal, is the Lost Metal itself. In Shadows of Self, there is a scene at the party where Wax and Steris walk by an empty case. They're displaying all the allomantic metals, and one of the cases is empty, and it says Atium, the Lost Metal. And this is interesting that, that Atium is the Lost Metal, and there may be other Lost Metals in Scadrial, but it's interesting that Sanderson pointed this out, because he's a planner. I'm willing to bet that he had Lost Metal planned out when he was writing Shadows of Self, and so there was already that kind of direction in his mind, I'm guessing. And Atium is truly lost, because after Ati's death in Mistborn Era 1, there is no new Atium. So there are bits left over from after the Catasendra, but nothing new, and so it is Lost Metal. But there are a couple other contenders in there. There is also Lerasium, which is very similar to Atium in that nobody can make any more of it, and I mean, it's another Lost Metal. But then the two other ones that I find even more interesting are Harmonium and Trellium. So Harmonium is called Et Metal by the Southern Scadrians, and it wasn't known to the North until they made contact with them in Bands of Mourning over there. I don't know if this is specifically the Lost Metal. It doesn't really fit, because it feels like that mystery was already unpacked in Bands of Mourning, but it's a contender because it was supposedly lost, and it connects back to what Miles was talking about, the bearers of the final metal. So that might have something to do with it. But then we also have Trellium, the mystery metal that Bleeder used to transfer allomantic and ferrochemical abilities to herself, Akandra. We don't know what this metal is or who it comes from. Sanderson has been very tight-lipped. I scrolled through all of his, all the words of Brandon in his archive, and he never tells us what it is, but we do know that it is a god metal similar to Atium or Lerasium or Harmonium, and it is from a shard that we know, which, this is pointing to my theory. I'm getting there. But those are kind of the runners up for what this lost metal might be. And I think the lost metal itself will have an intimate connection with who Trell is. And lastly, we have the scene after Wax's death in Bands of Mourning. See, I told you should have left for spoilers. But Wax has a conversation with Harmony, and I think it's a really incredible, beautiful scene, but it also gives us some insight into what we're up against with Trell. We see this picture of Scadrial surrounded by red mist, and it's like this oppressive force from the outside. And it's specifically stated that this is not what it actually looks like, but this is Harmony's best attempt to represent what he sees it as. Oh man, I had no sense of clarity that day. What I mean by it is Trell's attack on Scadrial and the forces lining up against it that Harmony is trying to fight off. And we also learn that Harmony doesn't know who Trell is. He knows that Trell is probably a shard or somebody empowered by a shard. And looking through the words of Brandon, we have some important notes. We know that Trell is, yes, empowered by a shard or a shard himself, him or herself. He hasn't confirmed the gender of Trell. But there's also the color red. And if you are familiar with the Stormlight Archive, the color red is important because it shows a shard investing or forcing their own investiture into a planet that has already been claimed by another shard. So it's two investitures interacting and clashing, and that's what causes that color red. So we can already tell that there's some sort of other shard trying to influence Scadrial here. And we also know, Brandon confirmed that it is a shard that we know. Trell is a shard that we know, and at that point, the shards that had been revealed were Devotion, Dominion, Preservation, Ruin, Odium, Honor, Cultivation, and Autonomy. But there's also Harmony. Harmony is a distinct shard, so we can't rule out Harmony's involvement here. And that kind of leads us to this question. We have all of these sorts of influences and such, but who really is Trell? Sanderson has confirmed that there were multiple Trells over the ages and that some were not the same as the others, some were more significant, some were less significant. And I think he's playing with us. I think there's a lot of stuff he's just like, ah ha ha, wait and see, because he's freaking Sanderson and he's a genius. But there are some distinct possibilities, and after this I'm going to do my big reveal on my theory that's probably going to be wrong anyway, but I had fun coming up with it. But he was the god from the religion in Era 1, which Sanderson has hinted at that the religion of Trellogism from Era 1 is not the same as Trellism in Era 2, and so we have maybe Trell is just an outside force that we've never met before. There was also apparently a character named Trell who was a foreman in White Sand Volume 2. I haven't read White Sand yet, so I don't know, but there's that. There are thoughts that maybe it's Kelsier? Ugh. Answer in the comments, is it Kelsey or Kelsier? And of the shards listed, because it is a known shard that Trell is empowered by, a lot of the Cosmere fan base has been speculating that it's Autonomy, because Autonomy has kind of a precedent for for meddling, I guess. But Sanderson has confirmed that Trell has been many things over the years, is what he said. But I have a theory. And he said it's from a shard that we know. And what I've noticed in Sazed's relationship with Harmony, this shard, is that Sazed is much more of preservation. And he's holding two powers in tension, but his personality leans so far the one way. And this duality, it pulls on him and is damaging him, like there are things that he can't do because of the tension in these powers. And so I wonder, is Trell some opposing force within Sazed or Harmony's psyche that is working for ruin? Like, if Sazed has drifted so far toward preservation, is there some other part in him that is moving towards ruin? And I think this would be really interesting. I think it's unexpected, which is what I've come to expect from Sanderson. But I think there's a pretty compelling argument for Harmony being or empowering Trell because it fits his dual nature. And so I could be dead wrong, but I'm eager to see. Let me know in the comments who you think Trell is. I'm curious to hear your theories, or if I missed something in my Cosmere scholarship that you know, give me a shout out. And thanks for listening. I'm hoping you're enjoying the Cosmere content, and I hope to get some more out over the rest of this weekend. So see y'all. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Peace.